That daily habit you repeat without thinking could be destroying your prostate. Millions of men over 60 follow routines that seem protective, but research reveals that some of these practices hide dark side effects, even ignored by doctors. I am Dr. Ana Esperanza, a medical specialist in men's health with over 20 years of experience, and I have seen firsthand how small daily choices can decide who ages with freedom and who becomes a prisoner of his own body. Today, I will reveal the 5 habits that seem protective, but may carry hidden risks powerful enough to turn your life upside down. Write in the comments, "I want the truth about my prostate." Stay with me until the end, because there is a secret line between protection and destruction, and you may already have crossed it without knowing. The moment a man crosses the line of 60, every seemingly ordinary action gains an unexpected weight. A glass of water, a short walk, a simple meal, even a night's sleep. All of these details, once automatic routines, become decisive pieces in the fate of his prostate. It is in this gray territory between habit and consequence where the true danger hides, because what appears to protect can, at the same time, conceal an invisible trap. This is where the 5 habits begin, the very ones most people believe are the prostate's greatest allies, but which, misunderstood or misapplied, can open the door to a far darker reality than you imagine. The first habit is hydration. It seems harmless, almost trivial, but when an older man clings to the idea that drinking water is always healthy, he forgets that his body no longer responds the way it once did. What once represented balance may now turn into torment. I have seen patients who believed they were strengthening themselves by drinking large amounts of liquid at night. The result? Endless nights, constant trips to the bathroom, broken sleep, and fatigue piling up day after day. What was meant to be a natural remedy had become a silent poison, eroding their vitality. Few realize that the bladder, weakened by time, loses efficiency, and the prostate, more sensitive, reacts with hidden inflammation. The man thinks he is cleansing his body, but in reality, he is poisoning himself with sleepless nights and an overburdened prostate. I remember an elderly man who insisted on drinking 4 glasses of water before bed, convinced it would purify his blood. He admitted waking up 6 times each night, exhausted and unable to recover. What he thought was a gesture of self-care had become a nightly sentence. His bed no longer a refuge, but his bathroom, a prison. Then comes the seemingly simplest act, walking. A short stroll after meals, so often recommended by doctors, has become almost a mantra of longevity. But what if this celebrated habit hides a dangerous line? I have seen men who force themselves to walk after heavy dinners, only to experience not relief, but pelvic pain. Circulation increased, yes, but in a fragile body, what intensified was not vitality, but hidden inflammation. What should have been a gesture of freedom turned into the trigger of silent suffering. This cruel paradox is rarely discussed, but it is very real. Even walking, if misapplied, can become a step toward decline. One patient told me something unsettling. After adopting the ritual of post-dinner walks, he began to feel a constant pressure in his lower abdomen. At first, he thought it was just fatigue. Later, it grew into a heavy sensation, as if something inside him were pressing outward. He believed he was doing everything right to protect his health, but his body was screaming that this excess zeal was dragging him into chronic inflammation. There is also a habit many keep silent, almost as if it were forbidden: sexual activity. For years, this topic has been surrounded by embarrassment. What few know is that maintaining regularity can indeed help the prostate, acting as a natural valve of release. But here too, a shadow lurks. Science shows that frequency may be protective, but in weakened bodies, excess can bring hormonal wear, unexpected fatigue, and even persistent discomfort. The line between benefit and risk is so thin, it may disappear before a man even notices. And when he does, it is often too late. Imagine a 65-year-old man who discovers online that regular ejaculation protects against prostate cancer. Convinced, he turns this into an obligation, almost medical in nature. Without realizing it, he transforms intimacy into a mechanical routine, stripped of pleasure. What should have been joy and care became burden and anxiety. The result was not vitality, but exhaustion and hormonal imbalance. Diet is another domain where myth and reality collide. Eating cooked tomatoes, pumpkin seeds, cruciferous vegetables, All of these have been praised as shields against prostate cancer, and it is true that these foods contain protective compounds. But what no one says is that, in excess or without balance, those same nutrients can cause metabolic overload, unexpected interactions with medication, even digestive disturbances that silently inflame the pelvic region. The plate that once seemed like salvation can quietly become the source of discomfort. I recall an elderly man who radically changed his diet, filling his meals with cruciferous vegetables and seeds at every sitting. Within weeks, he suffered from gas, cramps, indigestion. His prostate, far from grateful, reacted with pain and swelling. His excess discipline had turned against him. And finally, the most underestimated habit of all, sleep. Restorative sleep is one of nature's greatest free medicines. But the modern man, surrounded by screens, stress, and anxiety, rarely reaches it. Even when he thinks he is sleeping well, he often wakes without realizing his rest was shallow, incapable of restoring. What his body receives is not relief, but fragments. That invisible wear raises inflammation and fuels prostate degeneration. I met a man of 70 who swore he slept 8 hours a night, but his nights were interrupted 5 or 6 times to urinate. His body was trapped in a state of constant alert, unable to reach deep phases. He thought he was resting, but in truth, he was accelerating his aging. These 5 habits, so celebrated, seem to form the perfect list of protection, but each hides dangerous cracks. It is not enough to drink water, walk, eat well, sleep, and maintain sexual activity. The danger lies in the details, in the balance so few manage to achieve, because the body after 60 no longer reacts as it once did, and what seemed like salvation may, in fact, be the beginning of an invisible cycle of destruction. And here lies the question almost no one dares face. How sure are you that your habits are saving your prostate, and not condemning it in silence? But this is only the surface. He believed he was doing everything right. 7 glasses of water a day, walks after every meal, a diet stacked with vegetables, carefully planned nights of 8 hours of sleep, and even an intimate calendar followed like a medical protocol. At 68, he proudly told everyone that he had cracked the code of longevity. He repeated it like a mantra. I'm following the science. Nothing can go wrong. But when he sat in front of me, what I saw was not health. It was a body worn down, and a man haunted by exhaustion and fear. He started by describing his nights. What should have been a refuge had become torture, waking 5, 6, sometimes 7 times to empty his bladder. He never entered deep sleep. Each morning, he felt decades older, his skin gray, his eyes heavy, his mind foggy. He said it felt as though he was aging years and weeks. And still, he clung to the idea that his discipline was saving him. He confessed that he drank glass after glass of water right before bed, convinced it was washing toxins from his body. What he thought was purification was actually silent sabotage. Every drop was stealing hours of rest, and with them, his strength. Daylight brought no relief. The walks he once enjoyed now pressed against him like punishment. At first, the movement felt freeing, but slowly, each step became heavier, his pelvis tight, the muscles around his prostate sore and inflamed. He described it as if a fist were clenching inside him, never letting go. Yet he continued, convinced that walking equaled health. His body whispered the truth, but he chose silence. His diet, too, betrayed him. Plates loaded with cruciferous vegetables, seeds, and tomatoes simmered in olive oil, a menu he believed untouchable, perfect. He refused any food outside this narrow ritual, but his gut revolted. Gas, cramps, bloating, indigestion. Each meal was no longer nourishment but battle. His table, once a place of strength, became a stage for quiet suffering. With shame, almost in a whisper, he said, "Doctor, I did everything they told me. I followed every rule, but I'm getting worse." And then came the secret that weighed on him most. Intimacy, stripped of desire, had become obligation. He had read studies linking frequent ejaculation to prostate protection, so he scheduled it, tracked it, forced it. What should have been pleasure and closeness turned into routine and pressure. Instead of vitality, he was left with fatigue, irritability, and an aching void in his pelvis. What was meant to be life-affirming had turned mechanical, cold, and suffocating. This man, who thought himself a model of preventive health, was living proof of the paradox. Habits without balance do not save, they destroy. He did not have cancer, nor a major disease. What consumed him was unseen, silent, and daily, and he was not the only one. A 72-year-old man came to me carrying his water bottle everywhere, sipping obsessively. He thought he was guarding his health. Instead, his bladder weakened. Incontinence crept in. Soon, he could not attend dinners, trips, or even simple walks without fear of humiliation. What was supposed to be discipline became chains of shame. A 66-year-old, devoted to the walk after meals advice, refused to skip a single session. Even after a heavy meal, even when exhausted, he walked. One night, after a feast, he forced himself to move. His blood pressure dropped, his body collapsed, and he lay helpless on the pavement until a neighbor found him hours later. His loyalty to the habit had nearly killed him. Another man turned food into religion. He cut everything not on the protective list. No flexibility, no variation. His discipline was absolute, but his body hollowed. Deficiencies mounted. His blood thinned with anemia. His muscles weakened. His vitality vanished. His wife, in tears, told me, "I've never seen him so dedicated, and I've never seen him so sick." And there were more. Men who believed in strict sleep schedules but never realized their nights were shallow, fragmented, and unrestful. Men who turned intimacy into ritual, and with it, lost all joy. Men who turned health into obsession, and obsession into illness. All of these men carried the same curse. They mistook discipline for protection when it was quietly destroying them. The line they thought kept them safe had already been crossed. This is the truth no one dares to say. It is not the habit itself that saves or destroys, but how it is lived. Water that purifies can also poison. Walking that strengthens can also wound. Intimacy that liberates can also imprison. Food that nourishes can also suffocate. Sleep that heals can also decay. The most dangerous part is the silence. Most men never share these struggles. They fear that speaking of weakness will strip them of dignity. So they endure, night after night, meal after meal, step after painful step, until one day their body forces them to face the truth. By then, the cost is too high. This is why following rules is never enough. Manuals don't save you. Copying others doesn't protect you. After 60, your body is no longer the same. What shields one man can crush another. The line between benefit and destruction is razor thin, almost invisible. And so the question every man must face echoes louder. Are your habits truly saving your prostate, or are they condemning it, slowly, in silence? What happened to him? Could happen to you. Could happen to anyone. After hearing so many stories, one unsettling truth becomes impossible to ignore. No habit is entirely safe. Each one holds two faces. It can be medicine, or it can be poison. What determines the outcome is not the habit itself, but an invisible line, unique to each man, a threshold shaped by age, by fragility, by the hidden responses of the body. What shields one man can ruin another. And that is the cruel paradox of the prostate after 60. The very 5 habits celebrated as pillars of longevity are, at the same time, double-edged blades. Hydration is the most obvious example. Water clears toxins, supports urinary flow, reduces inflammation. But I have seen countless men sabotage themselves unknowingly. One patient told me, with pride, that he kept a large glass of water on his bedside table and drank it religiously before falling asleep. He was convinced this nightly cleanse was extending his life, yet his reality was far darker. His nights were shattered into fragments, his bladder pulling him awake again and again. He looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "I don't understand. I'm disciplined. I'm careful, but I feel like I'm dying inside." Water, the symbol of life, had become his tormentor. Walking carries the same paradox. Movement sustains circulation, keeps blood sugar under control, oxygenates the pelvic region. But the body of a man past 60 is no longer the body of 30. I remember a man of 74 who forced himself into long walks after every meal. He told me proudly that he hadn't missed a single evening in years, yet behind the pride was pain. His pelvis burned, his legs trembled, his lower back ached relentlessly. He ignored every signal, convinced his habit was non-negotiable. One night, after a heavy dinner, he collapsed mid-walk, his blood pressure crashing. Neighbors found him hours later, confused, his pride stripped away. His ritual of protection had dragged him to the ground. Even intimacy, the most personal of all, is not immune. Science supports the idea that regular ejaculation clears the prostate, reduces stagnation, and lowers certain risks. But when intimacy is transformed into duty, when pleasure is stripped away, it becomes something else entirely. A man once confessed to me, his voice trembling, "I schedule it, even when I don't feel like it. I force it. It's not sex anymore, it's a job." His body was tired, his spirit hollow, his relationship strained. What should have been an act of connection had turned mechanical, empty, draining him more than it nourished him. Food, too, can betray. The plate is often seen as medicine. Tomatoes rich in lycopene, seeds packed with zinc, cruciferous vegetables brimming with protective compounds. But obsession destroys balance. A man I treated had reshaped his entire diet around these protective foods. He ate them daily, at every meal, with near religious devotion. At first he felt reassured, as if he were building an unbreakable shield, but soon his stomach revolted. Bloating, cramps, indigestion plagued him. His energy declined, his sleep worsened, his vitality faded. His wife whispered to me, "He eats only what's good, but he's weaker than I've ever seen." His fortress of food had become his cage. And then there is sleep, the habit most underestimated of all. We imagine sleep as passive, but it is one of the body's most active processes of repair. Without depth, without restoration, hours in bed mean nothing. I met men who swore they slept 8 hours every night, yet they woke more tired than when they went to bed. Why? Because their nights were broken by bathroom trips, shallow cycles, and restless awakenings. Their bodies never reached the healing phases. One man told me, "I spend half my life in bed, and the other half recovering from it." His sleep had ceased to be medicine. It had become slow destruction. What is perhaps most disturbing is that these habits are rarely just routines. They become identities. The man who carries his water bottle everywhere, the one who boasts of his post-meal walks, the one who disciplines himself with strict diets and bedtimes, they are not just practicing habits. They are building their pride upon them. They believe they are in control, but when cracks appear, when their bodies push back, the collapse is devastating. Their sense of certainty is ripped away, and with it, their confidence, their freedom, their dignity. Some respond with denial. They push harder, clinging to the belief that, if it hurts, it must be working. They double down on water, on walks, on rules. But excess does not heal. It corrodes. They march straight into breakdown. Others fall into despair. Convinced that nothing works, they abandon every habit. They stop walking, stop eating carefully, stop paying attention. They sink into resignation, surrendering to decline. Both responses lead to ruin. And here lies the cruelest truth. Science gives guidelines, averages, studies, but it cannot chart the invisible threshold inside each man. Every prostate carries its own silent line, and it only reveals itself once crossed. That is why so many men believe they are safe while they are, step by step, walking toward collapse. At 60, 70, 80, life becomes a gamble. Each glass of water, each walk, each meal, each act of intimacy, each night of sleep is a wager. The man believes he is buying time, but in reality, he may be mortgaging it away. What was meant to extend life may shorten it. What was meant to free him may bind him tighter. This is the dark paradox of the aging prostate. It transforms routine into risk, certainty into illusion, safety into a fragile prison. The line between health and harm is razor thin, invisible to the eye, but merciless in its effect. And so I ask, are you truly sure that your habits are protecting your prostate, or are they slowly, silently tightening chains around it? Because there exists a secret threshold, a silent border, merciless and invisible, dividing protection from destruction. A threshold no one can see, but one every man must face. And perhaps you have already crossed it, without ever realizing. You've made it this far. Now it's time to face the truth most men avoid. There are no habits that are purely good or purely bad. There is only a secret threshold, invisible, that separates protection from destruction. And no book, no doctor, no manual can draw that line for you. It is written by your own body, in every signal it sends, in every moment you choose to ignore. The final revelation is this: the 5 habits so often praised, hydration, walking, sexual activity, diet, and sleep, are at once your most powerful allies and your most dangerous enemies. It all comes down to balance. The moment discipline hardens into obsession, the water that was supposed to cleanse becomes poison in the night. The walk meant to free you becomes pain. Intimacy meant to connect becomes a duty that drains. Food meant to nourish becomes an overload. Sleep meant to heal becomes shallow cycles that wear you down. What you thought was armor can turn into chains. What seemed light can become unbearably heavy. This is the taboo no one wants to admit. Even healthy habits can destroy your prostate if you don't know how to stop, how to adjust, how to listen. The true secret is not the list itself, but the wisdom in applying it. Neither water, nor sleep, nor food, nor sex, nor walking are your enemies. The true enemy is excess, obsession, blindness to the body's whispers. And here is the most disturbing truth of all. There is no universal formula. What saves one man may condemn another. What protects you today may ruin you tomorrow. This is why so many men believe they are in control, when in reality they've already crossed the invisible line that separates protection from destruction. The question you must ask is not, which habits should I follow? But, which signs am I ignoring? Because your body always speaks. In fatigue, in shallow nights, in silent discomfort, in small signals you'd rather dismiss. Ignoring them is walking blindfolded toward a cliff. Now you know what almost no one dares to say. The 5 habits that seem to be your shield may also be your sentence. And only you can decide on which side of the line you want to live. On the side of vitality and freedom, or on the side of decline and silent imprisonment. Before we end, I want you to do something right now. Write in the comments, I choose balance. I want to see who has understood the message, who has the courage to admit that prevention is not about magic formulas, but about attention, awareness, and wisdom. And if this revelation shook you, subscribe to the channel right now, because the next videos will uncover more truths no one else dares to speak about aging in men. Truths that can determine not just how many years you live, but how you will live them. Remember, prostate health is not only about longevity, it is about freedom, vitality, and dignity. And what you do silently every day can mean the difference between aging with strength or becoming a prisoner of your own body. The choice is yours. The threshold is already before you. And perhaps you have already crossed it.